Unstoppable, and the stream started off with a bang. Quicksand asleep.
It's the first game of Unstoppable Risen Premade. Come on, get up.
But I gotta say, he was smooth once he rolled into it. And our first series was Big Bongo Boys playing up against Clarity Black. For the first 20 minutes of the game, it was a bit of fighting in the top lane, but not much happened besides that.
Oh, but the engage coming out from Sejuani, but it's trading back, and Maokai actually regenerated a lot more health than I would expected there.
For Boxer Squirrel, just really those kind of impacts making a huge difference in the gold.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I want to call them Triple B, BBB, or Big Bongo Boys, because they're not all same solos.
Then there was a mega turnaround fight for the Big Bongo Boys after they made a big dragon attempt, but then they got challenged again for the dragon attempt, which Big Bongo Boys won the fight towards.
On this side, and there's a 3 on the other side, but I can't punch to it, and I can't cut to it. But Boxer Squirrel in the midst of it all, unable to get too much out, but finds the Q before his last dies, and Chicken Fried Rice to escape with good depth does not unfortunately have the W enough up to heal up, and they call comes back in the circuit, but finds one. Can she find two? No, she gets shut down, and the exchange of lives is so insane. Can Maokai find the damage retrieval back? And he does, but unfortunately, it is the ace on the side of CLB that allows them to get this dragon.
Much later in the game, Big Bongo Boys chased Akali down in the bot lane, meaning that Clarity Black had so much freedom to take that first Baron, and from that Baron, they spiraled away from a teamfight and took the victory.
The higher ranked Clarity Black, and honestly, still performing extremely well.
Oh, and she can't get out simply, tries to ulti over the wall, but that's crucial. 4 members sent down. This is the freest Baron I've seen, and it's incredibly hard to siege anything. As we're talking about that, the dragon does in fact spawn.
This will be a very important fight. Dragon Soul on the line. Let's see.
This is so easy, and the onslaught of shadows into all of the members. We talk about Wombo on one side, we talk about Wombo on the other side, but the whole time is not correctly pinned on enough members to make it worth it and to make it so they can make this comeback. And unfortunately, at the end, CLB take the lead, and they look to take the game.
And then as we rolled into game 2, Maokai was picked again.
Welcome to the League of Legends Champion Spotlight, featuring
Maokai, the Twisted Treant.
Maokai is a support tank hybrid.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Bold move.
Overall,
normally Darius is only reserved for those counter picks, and it looks like they're just going to respond with Maokai.
And the team was entirely green, so they kind of had the aesthetic advantage for the Big Bongo Boys. For the first 22 minutes, I kind of got distracted watching the LCS. 100 Thieves did win, to a big surprise of all the casters, and then we moved back into the game, where Baron and Swordpoint were both hit here by CLB.
Towards this dragon, we do have good death running up from base. Let's see if we can get here in time.
And this dragon is down to 9k HP. They opt to pull it out, so the potential steal is has a lot less potential to happen. The Maokai ulti for the engage. They want to make this happen. The Wombo combo, but the bullet time is just barely out of range, but it's not going to matter in the end. The deathball comes too strong, but this Twitch is free firing in the backline. Good Death trying to stall time for his 80 carry, but in a 1v4, when you're already routed and they're already on top of you, they make it look easy.
With CLB taking a massive victory in the second game and this series, it seemed like the casters had gone to Hogwarts, because every single time they were casting and made predictions, they just put a caster curse down on poor Big Bongo Boys.
The series is taken by Clarity Black.
And that was Risen Unstoppable for the night. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Risen Recap. Today we're looking towards Risen Unstoppable, and the stream...
Hello everybody, welcome back to week 4 of the Premade Dominant Series fall season, in our showcase matchup. We're all excited to be back here, get ready for some League of Legends action. This week will be the Heartbreakers squad taking on the OSU Gaming Buckeye Club. Now, obviously, I won't be doing very much work client side at all, and maybe a little bit of banter here, but I'll be bantering with my 2 amazing casters that you see beside me, Jay Turbo and Graham. Guys, how are we doing today on this fine Sunday afternoon?
I'm doing fantastic. Honestly, just excited to get back into it. Unfortunately, had to miscast last week, but now back into the dominate action, and I am just super ready to get another featured match on stream.
Exactly. It's going to be super exciting. We do have Worlds patch nowadays, so we have a lot of things to talk about in terms of what the meta has actually evolved into, and we've seen a lot of, even just in the 3 days that Worlds has been playing so far, a lot of the picks have sort of been refined. Specifically, Maokai has become quite the dominating pick and is really high in priority. Aatrox, of course, has been pretty much pick or ban within the first rotation. So a lot of the changes that we have seen as sort of pro play develops on the current patch becomes a bit more prevalent. That's the word for as we get into this. So I'm excited to see what kind of picks. Looking at just sort of the players overall, a lot of Maokai has been picked up. So we might see it. It might just be banned overall because the champion has become quite a nuisance. But I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, Graham, you did a great job highlighting. I was going to speak on that because it's interesting. Last week, we did have the Worlds patch ready. We were on that Worlds patch, I believe, but we hadn't seen any like the pro players going it right. Maybe like a little bit of Champions queue, and sometimes But now we have the play-ins, so you get to see some of these picks. The biggest pick that I still can't wrap my head around. You mentioned it. Aatrox is certainly a great pick, but Jay Turtle, do you have any idea why they're running Comet Aatrox in the top lane? Do you think maybe we'll see that in this week's slate of Premade Dominant?
I don't know about that one. I don't know about the Comet. I know that it's popular because it gives you some of those poke options if you're in a match that you're not going to be solo killing, or you're not going to have those extended fights where a Conqueror is super, super relevant. But it all comes down to player preference and what these players want to be running with.
Yeah, I mean, sorry. But
Oh no, I didn't mean to cut you off, Graham. I heard on the production side, I believe they're already draft side, so I'll let you continue that point, Graham, while you two go to draft to see maybe if we do see an Aatrox with the Comet picked up. So take it away, guys.
We're heading straight into draft, and these players just want to get in the game really, really quick. So going to go over the bans as quick as possible. Evelynn, pocket pick for the Buckeye Gaming Club jungler, and beyond that, the Akali, the Seraphine, the Sylas, all power picks we've seen across the board, and one of the picker bans, Caitlyn, is picked up by the Heartbreakers.
yeah, that's one of the sort of adaptations that we have seen is that before pro play, I wasn't really sure where Caitlyn stood. We knew they were strong, but just how strong it was, and now that we've come out, pretty much 100% presence. There's only a few games where Caitlyn has actually been dropped through and has become quite a nuisance to deal with in the bot lane, especially by really talented ADCs. So hopefully we'll be able to see some really good Caitlyn gameplay here, of course. But the Morgana being taken away from the Caitlyn pair, of course, one of the most dominant bot lane duos since forever, pretty much. So we will not be seeing that. But Lux is the other option and is typically more prioritized than the Morgana nowadays, but we will see the Maokai. So
Let's go!
Mic feedback
super hyped for the
off.
tree.
Mic
It has
off.
been years since the Maokai has actually been relevant, so super hyped to see it. I think it's probably going to be in the top lane. In Worlds, it has mostly been around the jungle. His clear speed has just become extremely potent, especially with the buffs to his Q. The 40 base damage added onto it really did a lot of work for him, and super prevalent here. But I think it will be top lane just based on champion preference. I know that the jungler for Heartbreakers prefers a more carry style or type pick, and of course locks it in with the Trundle, sort of corroborating what I was saying.
Exactly, that Trundle feeding into that carry play style. You can be utility focused, just shred a tank if you want, or you can pick up that Divine Sunderer, you can go Bork if you really want to, and just run down your opponents. One thing that we haven't mentioned, though, because obviously the Caitlyn, the Maokai, the Trundle, pretty standard. We've got a Pike Morgana, R1, R2 for the Buckeyes, and now that there's a Kai'Sa locked in, this is telling me it's Morgana mid, or we could get the maximum spice, throw that Morgana in the jungle.
I do think that it is actually more likely for a Morgana jungle just because I think it's a bit better than Morgana mid. We will see though. Lux being banned away from the Caitlyn pair, of course, very, very strong duo and doesn't want to deal with that at all, especially since this Pike is most certainly going into the support role. Dude Broman is very, very adequate on, is very, very efficient. Yeah.
He's really good on the Pike. He's very, very strong on it. He is, if I'm not mistaken, the highest ranked player on the Buckeye Gaming Club's roster. So that also means they maybe want to enable their support, who isn't traditionally seen as a carry role, to have some of that carry potential, to find these opportunities, to enable themselves to step up. But when you're running into Maokai Trundle, that's a front line that Pike is really going to struggle with. So we're going to have to see this Kai'Sa, see how the rest of their draft lines up to find that shred.
Yeah, very much so. And I mean, Pike, of course, has really limited the amount of sort of flex opportunities that you can have. There's sometimes mid, maybe top lane if you're really feeling it, but usually Riot has done a very good job at sort of sticking him into that support position. And with the Yone ban coming through, that's either predicting a Yone top or they also think that this is a Morgana jungle. So kind of interesting to see sort of the mindset and the insight into what these players are sort of thinking as they're drafting through this, but we'll see what the final ban is here as Yasuo will be taken away and the Wind Brothers will not be making their entrance on the stage. As we'll see what the Bullseye Gaming Club or the Buckeyes Gaming Club decides to pick up for their R4.
Yeah, have to see exactly what direction they go. One thing I'm going to say, though, just a little Graham and Turbo history, is the first league that we ever cast together was it was a Risen League for an org, and they had one of the best like Maokai support players in NA playing, because this was in like Divines in the Uncapped League, and so he was picked once, and we did not see Maokai again, and it has been 2 years to date since we've seen Maokai with similar presence, and I just love the champ. I love that he's here, but also Buckeyes want some carry. They want some shred. Picked up the Aurelia. Have not seen that in quite a while.
Yeah, the Aurelia is definitely an interesting one. The Vex Hover is a very typical answer, so I do like that they're sort of thinking ahead with that. But the quick switch over to Soraka is going to be a bit of a change up. Soraka has sort of fallen off as, a lot of the healing nerfs have come through. Not in the most recent patches, of course, but sort of over the year as we transition from durability patches and trying to balance things out. Healing, especially Soraka, has been nerfed quite substantially, but she still does find a lot of utility in just being a very good sustaining unit for a team. So a little bit less synergistic with the Caitlyn, of course. Doesn't really have that CC to provide for really good trap setups, but is a very powerful pick nonetheless. And of course, they'll just lock in the Vex regardless.
Yeah, that Vex to round things out makes a lot of sense. This Soraka, though, the one thing that immediately came to my mind was you're providing a very vulnerable enchanter to a Pike Kaisa lane that wants to hit level 2 and start snowballing.
Yeah, it is a bit different though, because one of the things about Soraka versus Pike matchup is that if you do manage to hit 2 fairly early or at the same time with Pike, you can just drop a silence on the Pike and you cancel the hook. So it's not necessarily the same sort of, oh, well, it's Enchanter versus Pike, it should be Pike favored. It does have a lot of counterplay involved in the Soraka. Of course, silence is a very high cooldown compared to the Pike hook, and I believe that part of the cooldown gets refunded if it's canceled as well on that other side. So there is a lot of leeway for the Pike to play, but there is counterplay for the Soraka there as well.
Yeah, there is a lot of counterplay, and we see the Buckeyes round their composition out with the Fiora. Going to send that up to the top lane. Lots of AD, lots of bruisers, lots of old school, but still pretty interesting across the board, honestly.
Yeah, I think the Fiora is a very, very solid answer into a lot of tanks. It's a very skill-heavy champion, though, so we'll have to see how they pilot it, because Fiora can end up looking kind of just stranded in a game and doesn't really end up having a lot of impact. So I really do want it to succeed, though, because I think Fiora is one of those champions where if you do play Fiora, she is really strong right now.
Yeah, very, very strong. And now the draft's finished up, we're going to bring Slayer back in here for some more group analysis, as this is just really, really interesting across the board, and I'm excited to see how these teams play it out.
Yeah, J Turbo, you made an interesting point. Interesting is a word that I would use. I might be capitalizing the INT depending on how this game plays out with some of these certain picks. But yeah, there certainly see some World's mainstays, right? You get the Maokai that's been such a high carry pick, but you also see an absence of some of them, which is, obviously Premade dominant is not necessarily at the level of the play-in Worlds caliber talent we see, but I still thought it was kind of surprising. And Graham, you can maybe, I'm curious if you agree with me. Wasn't expecting no Misfortune or Aatrox in the bans or picks.
Yeah, I think Misfortune is the more surprising one of those two. I'm not a big fan of Aatrox because he is actually a very difficult champion to sort of pilot, and if it's not in your wheelhouse, it's not something that you regularly play or have practice, it can look a little bit awkward and can feel like you're not doing much in the game. So I do understand the Aatrox, but Misfortune, on the other hand, is surprising to me, especially since Kaisa is not necessarily the greatest of answers into the Caitlyn. You do tend to win out sort of around your 2-item power spike as Kaisa sort of gets to her Kraken Slayer, her PD, or her Collector, depending on how you build it, and can more or less duel out the Caitlyn, get on top of her. But I do agree that the Misfortune is a bit of a weird one to not pick up here, especially into things like Maokai Trundle. Maybe they didn't really want to pick that into it. A little bit immobile, doesn't really do much, and can very easily get your ulti canceled. Or maybe their read is that we're not going to be doing much damage with the ultimate anyway. So it is a little bit, but I do think that Kaisa is a little bit skill-based in this, because she does do well into the tanks, but is very short range into Maokai Trundle, can be a bit dangerous.
Positioning really will be the name of the game with that Kaisa pick for the Buckeye Gaming Club. But another pick that I thought was a bit intriguing, and Jay Turbo, maybe you could take me through this. Obviously, there's a lot of intriguing options when it comes to picking support in the current meta. You talked about the Buckeye Gaming Club's Pike pickup, how that might play in. Were you expecting to see Soraka pair with Caitlyn, and how do you think that might gel in the early stage and further into the game?
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily expecting the Soraka. I was expecting something more along the lines of a Lulu if you wanted to go for an Enchanter. But
Mhm.
especially with this being the Pike matchup, a great point that Graham brought up is the silence counterplay. There are some of those options. And also, the additional counterplay once level 6s come into play is how Wish can completely deny Pike's intention to get resets, get his ulti just popping off and continue going. Because if you can wish away that first ultimate and it doesn't result in a kill, that shuts down Pike's usefulness in a fight pretty much. And I think that there's a few of those interactions that the Heartbreakers are relying on, but it is still so very skill intensive that I'm not sure if they'll necessarily be able to pull it off, because these are fractions of a second. These are very, very tight margins that you have to be working within in order to deny those ultimates, in order to prevent those hooks, and memorizing those timers and being able to track where your abilities stack up into theirs.
Certainly will make for some seriously interesting interactions like you talked about if we see those come around. But I want to keep breaking down these comps because I think there's a lot of interesting parallels and spots where some interesting conflicts may come. And Graham, one of the ones that sticks out to me, I'm curious, obviously, if you're a Heartbreakers team, you have the major frontline advantage right now with that
Mhm.
Trundle, with that Maokai. But on the other side, Buckeye Gaming Club, they picked a couple of picks that really can kind of break behind that front line, especially for building resistances. Talk to me about, you obviously commented on the Fiora, but how effective do you think it is having a Morgana that is going to build damage in the AP department, and a Kaisa with that AP scaling alongside her AD kit? How do you think that'll play into breaking down the Heartbreakers front line in those fights?
Yeah, I think you actually brought up an excellent point with the Morgana. It's probably going to be one of the biggest sort of points for the Buckeyes Gaming Club to actually break through the Maokai and the Trundle, because looking at the rest of the team, it is pretty much full AD. You mentioned some AP scalings on the Kaisa, but Fiora, Irelia don't really have that same magic damage that can sort of shred through. So a lot of the gold that is going to be put in onto these tanks is going to be indexed into armor, and so things like the Leandries will come through. Maybe a demonic embrace will help to really shred through, and even just getting a pool max, which is usually the route you go when you're taking Morgana, you max your W so that you can clear camps faster, can actually start to do a lot of chip damage to these frontline. And I really do think that the Morgana, excuse me, is going to be one of the biggest points for BGC in this game, because if the Morgana gets far behind, then there's not really much that BGC can do to break through the team, because they just build a Frozen Heart, they build their Thornmail, and all of a sudden you're not really touching them at all.
Well, yeah, Graham, that's a great point. I'm glad you alluded that. There's two ways this could go, especially from the AP to AD ratios with resistances. You talked about if the Morgana can't get ahead, there's just pure AD relationships. That could go really well for Heartbreakers. I'm going to make you put your money where your mouth is here as we get into predictions. Do you think the Heartbreakers take this one behind that front line, or are you leaning more towards those duelists for the Buckeye Gaming Club?
I think I'm predicting Heartbreakers here, and it kind of alludes to one of my favorite points about drafting is just how easy is it to actually play these drafts out. And I think when I look at Heartbreakers, it's very straightforward. It has an idea. It has a very simple idea. We have a front line, we have a Caitlyn backline, and Vex can go in. Buckeyes Gaming Club does still have an identity. I'm not going to say that there isn't, but it's a bit more complex. They have to play really well and really precisely. So I'm going to lead towards Heartbreakers in this one.
Well, Graham obviously leaning with the Heartbreakers. Maybe I'm trying to break the heart of this casting duo, because Jay Turbo, are you gonna roll with Graham over there, or are you gonna differ and take the Buckeye Gaming Club for game one?
So I am going to agree with Graham. I do think the Heartbreakers are going to take this one again for that same reason, that ease of execution, where you have that centered front line, you have a very straightforward engage in the Maokai, and that front line is going to be very hard to manage. But I will say in defense of the Buckeyes, if this Pike gets ahead, it'll be very, very tough to deal with if the Soraka is getting one shot in fights, if this Caitlyn is mispositioned and just gets caught out. And also, there's a world where the Fiora can just press ulti, get that grand challenge onto the Maokai, tons of true damage down, and bye-bye frontline, and the fight can just snowball. But those rely on some pretty significant early game leads, and I'm not sure if the options are there with the Morgana jungle not being the most aggressive to start things off. Just not sure if that's going to be present. Still have hope though. Still think that there's options for OSU or for the Buckeyes, but I'm leaning towards Heartbreakers overall.
Well, unfortunately, the analyst desk here is going to have to break the hearts of Buckeye Gaming Club members because I also will be rolling with the Heartbreakers in Game 1. But to figure out if we're all about to look silly on the analyst desk for predictions or if the Heartbreakers will continue to dominate like they have in Premade dominant early, we're going to have to go to a quick break. On the other side, Jay, Turbo, and Graham will have game number 1 between Heartbreakers and OSU Gaming Buckeye Club. Don't go anywhere, Risen Faithful.
To the Risen recap. Today we're looking towards Risen Unstoppable, and the stream started off with a
Wake
bang.
up!
Quicksand asleep.
It's the first game of Unstoppable Risen Premade. Come on, get up.
But I gotta say, he was smooth once he rolled into it. And our first series was Big Bongo Boys playing up against Clarity Black. For the first 20 minutes of the game, it was a bit of fighting in the top lane, but not much happened besides that.
Oh, but the engage coming out from Sejuani, but it's trading back, and Maokai actually regenerated a lot more health than I would expected there.
For Boxer Squirrel, just really those kind of impacts making a huge difference in the gold.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I want to call them Triple B, BBB, or Big Bongo Boys, because they're not all same solos.
Then there was a mega turnaround fight for the Big Bongo Boys after they made a big dragon attempt, but then they got challenged again for the dragon attempt, which Big Bongo Boys won the fight towards.
On this side, and there's a 3 on the other side, but I can't punch to it, and I can't punch to it. But Boxer Pro in the midst of all, unable to get too much out, but finds the Q before his last dies, and Chicken Fried Rice.
Welcome to Summoner's Rift.
And we are back onto the Rift. And we said it was going to be a short break. Indeed, it certainly was. A couple seconds, make sure everything was synced up, and we can bring you that dominate action. As we're already seeing the Buckeyes stepping forward, and Dude Roman feared away. I think that's the end of our shenanigans to start things off.
Yeah, that's gonna be it, but did look like BGC was trying to get a little bit of a cheeky invade there. Of course, they have the Pike, they have Morgana binding. If they so choose to start it, would be a little bit rough on the clear, but I think the first blood is most certainly going to be worth it for that end, but nothing will happen. Taking a look at a quick gander at the room pages and the summoner spells, nothing really too crazy here. There are some interesting options, though. Kaisa did opt for the Hail of Blades, and the only reason why I say that is because at Worlds, it has been Lethal Tempo that has been probably the more selected option out of Hail of Blades. In fact, I don't think I've seen it at any game so far, but it's a bit interesting. I think it's personally preference. I'm not a huge fan of Lethal Tempo on Kaisa. I think Hail of Blades is perfectly fine, so no dig on Hunt for Value there, but, you know, will be thing. Interesting thing, though, Trundle doesn't have items.
Yeah. I don't know if that's maybe a bug with the client or if he just does not have items and will not hit level 2 off of this opening camp. And if that's the case, yeah, he's got a camp and he is still level 1. So there were no items, had to clear blue buff, realized his mistake, and is now back. And that's gonna be so much tempo lost for calculated luck. And, oh, actually, in the bot lane, we already have a fight. Bean Guns are too far forward. Ignite already dropped. And there won't be a quick kill quite yet. Rapid Fire getting a ton of damage down. Superman 1 auto down. Instead, it's Rapid Fire with the first blood.
Yeah, very, very quick kill up there on the bot lane, but thought they had the early aggression with double Hail of Blades and, of course, in the Soraka. But it looked like Duberman couldn't get out of that range as Caitlyn just in time. The Lethal Tempo stacking up and will result in a very quick kill there. But looking back at this jungle matchup, I mean, Morgana is already a very fast clearer, especially when compared to Trundle, and with this setback, I mean, it's going to be an absolute monstrosity. Morgana's already level 3, Trundle just at level 2.
I mean, there's nothing else to say. It's just such a brutal position to be in. I mean, we've all had that happen to us where you do just misclick at the start and you walk out of base and you're like, oh, I have 500 gold in my inventory, but normally, we figured out by the end of the first minute. Instead, this time, calculated luck, unfortunately, was not calculating those gold amounts correctly and got stuck behind. And this XP difference, it's not just going to carry over with this opening clear being a little further behind. It's also going to mean that you're not going to hit level 4 off of your full clear. It means you're always going to be about 1 camp behind or more than that. So, big advantage for the Buckeyes starting things off.
Yeah, absolutely detrimental for calculated luck to miss that, but a little bit of engage here. Don't think I quite need to shut up just yet. It looks like there's no minions to continue that one on to, but I mean, Morgana now has just free roam to just come mid here. It is in favorable position for the Irelia, but of course, calculated luck here for the counter gank. Really well played.
You have the counter gank option, but Kwasi getting stunned up. Now the stacks are here for Icy Oreo. Is the extra damage calculated luck going to be enough? Indeed. Now it's a duel between the junglers. We're brought back up top side. Bongo's bringing it low, but actually, Franker's just getting ran down by calculated luck. We were expecting this to be just a huge advantage for him, but there's no damage. Those trundle autos were too much, and the blast plant barely secures safety for the Buckeye jungler. Still, advantage to the Heartbreakers.
Yeah, very, very close duel there. One auto off on killing the Vex there, and it would have saved the Morgana flash, and they walked away with pretty equal health bars and maybe even contest that Scuttle Crab, but just short on that one. But we will maybe see a gank here as... Calculated luck. Good cancel.
Good cancel, and Dubroman's just going to fall at that point. Once you land the cancel on the dash, there's nothing else to do. As I love this approach being taken by calculated luck, is going to be behind on XP, so let's just hit level 3 and gank, gank, gank.
Yeah, and he has Trundle, so definitely is one of the better champions to do that as. Jerome might be in trouble here, but just a little walk away, and no harm, no foul there.
No harm, no foul, but sort of going back to the adjustments made by calculated luck, now that there's a kill and assist and that bonus XP from being around lane, that early game mistake has just been completely negated, as now in this bot lane, Dubroman and the Hunt for Value were also trying to get an early lead and have now fallen behind.
Yeah, I mean, if you're to look at this from just a matchup standpoint, I think the Trundle's out of position they would have been anyway if he started off normally and just chose to clear. So really well played from him to just look for these aggressive kills, aggressive assists, and just try to get back in the game that way. And at the end of the day, only about 300 gold down.
And that's insane to me, with it being that close, but now looking for a regank. Oh, and Pranger missing the root. Still might not matter, actually. If you're on Icy Oreo, flash back forward, but that pillar might be just enough off the tower shot. Calculated luck takes a bite out of Icy Oreo, and it's going to be an even trade in the mid lane.
Yeah, a little bit of a miss there from Pranger. Didn't expect the stun to hit, I guess. It was a little bit of an awkward one, but, you know, does end up resulting in having to burn the Aurelia flash and, of course, trading 1-for-1 there. So a little bit of a misplay, but I think, you know, BGC will be more or less happy with that. Of course, the Aurelia already sort of behind from the Vex after dying and then having to restart the lane. So getting anything they can.
It is also just a pretty tough matchup into the Vex, as of course, every Aurelia dash to get those stacks up is going to mean free Doom procs, free Doom and Gloom, and that's just bonus damage. You really don't want to be giving your control mage opponent who's already maintaining the lane a lot better.
Exactly, and the wave right now is being frozen in front of Frosty, and of course, with a Trundle in the vicinity, it is a bit dangerous. Icy Oreo playing it very well to sort of just keep their distance from the wave, except that this is not going to be good for them if they step up and just kind of sacrifice a little bit of gold, stay in XP range. But going down though.
Dubroman taking a ton of damage, and Hunt for Value unable to find much, as that just results in a favorable trade. Now dashing forward once again. Not sure about this decision from Dubroman. Does have Summoner heal, but burning a sum when you really didn't have to. Tough position for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, and this is one of the things about playing Kai'Sa into Caitlyn. Even though you can get onto her the mid game, early game it's so difficult to find the avenue to actually get trades onto her because you're only 525 range. It's a significant disadvantage here, and even when the Pyke goes for things, the Kai'Sa is forced to stay so far back, even just to CS, and it becomes so difficult to follow up on anything. And this is going to result in a pretty easy lane. Doesn't really help that, of course, the Caitlyn got 2 kills early on, but you know, it would have looked like this a little bit less so, to a lesser extent.
Yeah, to a lesser extent, as calculated luck does have that level 6 now, and actually Flosky wants to go in. Spell Immune prevents the fear from causing any disruption, but still the Heartbreakers want it, and Flosky snipes down the Pyke. I don't even think he was in vision. I think that was accidental, but still, you'll take that kill every day of the week.
Yeah, most certainly you will, as going to be a pretty sizable lead for the Heartbreakers so far. 2k gold up at 8 minutes into the game. Not the biggest one, but you know, 8 minutes into the game having a pretty sizable lead is going to be pretty advantageous for them, as they're going to look to snowball this. I really want them to try and prioritize this Rift Tail here, but Engage is going to make me stop.
Oh no, Icy Oreo thought he had the space, but instead it was all just a bait. Calculated luck on a killing spree as this Trundle just continues to ramp up and continues to feed into that carry style that Calculated likes to play.
Exactly. And back to my point, though, before the Aurelia unfortunately was met with a gank, I do want them to try and prioritize this Rift Herald. It's a bit difficult considering top lane Prio is pretty much non-existent as solo kill?
Almost.
Not quite.
Alright, back to the Herald, back to the Herald.
Yeah, back to the Herald. Very important to actually get a lot of that gold from the Herald before 14 minutes when plates drop so that you can actually start to snowball your gold lead, especially with things like the Trundle that can tend to fall off if they don't keep up their pressure. But a little bit of an invade here on the top side for Pranger. It looks like they might want to try to dive this, but Calculated Luck is going to answer.
Calculated Luck is here, and now Bongos is just separated, but Pranger wants to keep going. He's got the damage, got plenty of support, and now Calculated Luck stuck on the wrong side. Will be able to flash away from that grand challenge, but now Dubroman wants to get involved. Escansor's sure to fall. Bongos picks it up, and good lead, good positioning now secured for the top lane of the Buckeyes.
Yeah, a little bit of a misplay from Bongos. The flash Q didn't quite go over the wall and would have probably been able to kill the Trundle there, but will only get away with 1 kill instead of the 600 bounty that the Trundle is now sporting. But, you know, when you're behind in the game, you're going to take whatever you can get, and of course the Fiora getting 1 kill up on their opponent so far is going to be good news for BGC.
Good news, but worse news in the bot lane as that first tower did just get taken. That means all of the plates and solo first tower gold given over to Rapid Fire is now Flosty wants to punish Pranger for going for this Herald. Right now the only option is try and burst to try and find the smite and make it worth, and indeed will pick up that objective. So Pranger goes down but picks up the Herald.
Yeah, honestly, seems a little bit weird. They obviously shouldn't have been there on that timing. Everyone was respawning and on the map, so a little bit of an awkward time to start the Rift Herald, but trading your life for a Rift Herald to stop a massive snowball is actually going to be really important for BGC, and they could try to look to get plates elsewhere for one of their carries, maybe try to get the Fiora a little bit more ahead, maybe try to get the Aurelia back into the game. So I do think that the Rift Herald is actually going to be overall worth. It is, in fact, more gold than 1 kill. If you were to get the plates off, it's going to be about 320 from the plates plus killing it, so it is technically worth, as Dubroman.
Yeah, Dubroman looking to try and enable Icy Oreo, but the timing wasn't quite right, and instead it's just going to be a chunk and a quick escape out of Floss, but flash forward again, miscommunication with Icy Oreo as another mistake out of the mid lane and another kill for Flosty.
Yeah, a little bit too aggressive from Dubroman there, but it looks like this is actually really smart from the Heartbreakers. They're swapping up the Caitlyn Soraka lane to try and get even more plates on the top side, move the Maokai down. They're already having a rough time into the Fiora, and just, alright, we want to get our Caitlyn more ahead. They already have the Gale Force equipped, and they'll be looking to take many more plates after this.
And with Calculated Luck stepping forward, it's really pushing Bongos off. There is that threat of a dive, but now Pranger nearby. Perhaps they want to try and bait out the dive instead, but good read out of the Heartbreakers. They know the team is inbound, but now it's 4v3. Calculated Luck, first to go up, drops the subjugate, but Bongos needs to survive. That wish keeps Calculated Luck alive for just enough time and will fall, so there's the healing for the team, but still 1-for-1 in a disadvantageous fight. Now Flosty shows up for support. Seems the teams want to keep going, but without that Fiora, that's so much of your damage gone, and with the one shot onto the Morgana, it's gonna be a wipe nearly as Oreo and Dubroman at threat of a dive. Escanor finding a Kai'Sa on the bot side, fighting just does not stop. And this is why Maokai's a power pick. This is why Maokai makes that difference, can just walk up to someone and do as much damage as they can do while healing half of it up and being a fat tank. Love to see it as the Heartbreakers pull even further ahead with that second tower.
Yeah, you love to see it if you're Heartbreakers. Maybe not so much if you're on the other end, but, you know, very, very good fight for Heartbreakers up in the top lane there. Trying to collapse and get all the plates up top lane, and of course, BGC, good idea to try and actually contest it, try to stop the Caitlyn from getting so much gold, but at this point the wallets are just too big for the Caitlyn, able to kite out, stay from range, and even the Trundle pick was going 1-for-1, and the gold from the bounty actually went onto the Pike, so it's not even on an optimal target. So even though they are going to be happy to collect that nonetheless, Pike is still very good with a decent amount of gold, just not where you want to see it.
not where you want to see it, as Icy Oreo forced to flash, and Velocity once again, this Vex certainly proving to pay out in spades. A second Drake picked up for the Heartbreakers as well. Looks like the Buckeyes are posturing for a fight, but Bongos goes in without the rest of the team, and now that Grand Challenge doesn't do nearly enough. Another kill goes down, and the scattered fight is already lost, as Pranger going to be the next to fall. Looking to take one with him with the help of Dude Bro Man. There is a chance for some resets. There is a chance for something to go crazy, but just not enough damage, and the Buckeyes are lucky to escape with only one loss.
Yeah, a little bit too far forward there from Bongos. Try to get a pick onto the Caitlyn, but you know that the Soraka is going to be nearby. You saw the Trundle there. They just got the Dragon, so a little bit curious there, and they tried to clean up something on the back end, but ultimately got away 1-0.
1-0. As now looking at the game as a whole, about a 4K gold lead in favor of the Heartbreakers, and now looking to finally crack that outer ring. Did get 2 towers complete plates, so that is a ton of gold going to the pockets of Rapid Fire. He's already got that second BF sword on top of the Mythic, whereas most of the side of the Buckeyes are still working on their first Mythic.
Yeah, I mean, to put it in perspective, Caitlyn is 3K gold up on the Kaisa here. It is quite an astonishing amount, and it quite literally is more than the actual team gold advantage. Actually, no, that's a lie. But it's
almost the entire lead.
It's almost the entire lead. So it is quite substantial here, and of course, Caitlyn is one of those champions where once it's ahead, it is super hard to shut down. The range is just there, and once you start doing damage, I will shut up though.
All good, no harm, no fouls. Dude Bro Man tried to find a pick. Escanor forced to flash away. Calculated luck in the vicinity, but don't expect anything too crazy to go down. As again, the Heartbreakers just focusing on this outer ring of towers, and we'll find it.
Yeah, Kaisa not going to be able to do too much to stop that there. Way too weak to even 1v1 the Caitlyn, let alone with a Soraka attached to her side. So we'll be taking 3 outer towers so far within 16 minutes, and that's going to be setting them up for a very, very fast-paced game, and probably looking to close it out by the time Baron spawns, maybe even Soul around that time. So hopefully I'm looking for Heartbreakers to keep this pressure up, to keep their aggression, and be able to actually use this lead that they've accumulated instead of just kind of stalling the game out and waiting for things to scale.
Yeah, and if they do slow the game down, actually I'm not even going to be able to bring that up, as Icy Oreo looking for an opportunity on the Quasti. Spell immune on the Aurelia, but the Dark Binding goes wide. The Wish is nearly enough, and the stopwatch on top of it will mean that Flossie survives, and Escanor now coming in for the cleanup. Too much damage out of Flossie does go down to the Pike, so it's a 1-for-1 to start. Bongos is here, wants to cut down this tree, chop it down as he couldn't during the laning phase, but Grand Challenge was not popped. Too much healing from the Soraka, as that root under tower maybe does enough. Hook down, and it will be enough. The Grand Challenge finds the kill off the back of the hook, and Bean Guzzler will not be doing anything else, as a couple quick picks for the OSU Buckeyes Gaming Club.
Yeah, they will most certainly take that. It ends up being a 2-for-1 there, only trading off their Aurelia, but you can see just how much this gold lead means. The Aurelia is not even able to 1v1 the Vex at this point in the game. Doesn't even get the kill on the back end, and of course Pike comes in, cleans it up, and could say it was a little bit of a misstep for Frosty to even try and walk up there, but of course it's just completely crushing the position for Heartbreakers here. The Soraka coming in, and one of the sort of downsides to being behind against a Soraka or one of these super healing or shielding based enchanters that you don't have the luxury to actually get grievous wounds. You can't cut a lot of the healing here because you just don't have the money. You're barely getting your first item anyway, and so you saw a lot there where the Maokai is even able to sustain through 3 people with a Soraka there. The healing comes, the ulti comes down for the Vex, and it's just so difficult to actually deal with a Soraka when you're this far behind.
Yeah, very, very difficult, but one, I guess, point of solace that I'm thinking of is Bongos on the Fiora is in a decent position. Do you think that might be the avenue that the Buckeyes try to take for? Actually, might not even be able to bring up that point. It's actually, Ward does spot 1. Should be enough to tell this team to stay away. Actually, everyone grouping up. This is set up to be a 5v5, and Pranger already chunked out to start. Calculated luck. on a difficult position as Escanor has that point-and-click engage. Pranger falls, Icy Oreo next to do so. Bongo's trying to escape off the Grand Challenge, but the fight is over before it can really begin.
Yeah, very good flank from Escanor on the Maokai. The twisting advance really sealing the deal for a lot of these fights, especially in the choke points like River, like those entrances into the Dragon Pit. It's going to be super difficult to deal with it as playing 2 for 0, and of course we will be taking the Dragon here unless a steal comes through. Don't imagine it'll be the case, but it will not.
Yeah, no smite, so don't see there being many avenues, as now they are going to be able to pick up this mid tower, so at the very least got something back. And one thing I've noticed is this gold lead hasn't really increased all that much. It's held steady at around 4K, and I will say that's good for the Buckeyes if they want to find a way back into this game.
Yeah, I was actually just going to bring that up, so thank you for the segue. But yeah, the gold lead has not increased at all for Heartbreakers, maybe by a few hundred, but when you're at the magnitude about 4,000, that doesn't mean that much. So it's very good to see that at least the Buckeyes are trying to at least slow the game down and maybe try and keep up with where they are at the stage of the game, maybe try to get something later on and try to turn it around at some random pick. But the way Heartbreakers are playing, it looks so coordinated to get a lot of these team fights down, get a lot of the positioning that they have. They're going to have to work super hard to get any of it. But they are doing very good so far, even though the last fight didn't go so well, 2 for 0. They still have some type of fighting chance if they pick the fights correctly, if they have the right positioning. They aren't exactly getting... The position isn't getting worse.
Yeah, their position isn't getting worse, and that's always a great spot to be in if you are behind. Although, one thing I will say is I want to see the Buckeyes focus a little bit more on either punishing side laners for being alone, like we saw onto Escanor, finding a pick. I just want to see them look for these skirmishes or these tricky positions, because the 5v5 is always going to the Heartbreakers, but now actually won't even be able to talk about
They
that.
heard you.
Blasty going down. Seems like maybe they did, but instead it's just going to be attempted 1v1s. The follow-up now here from Pranger and Dubroman, but it's responded to by the bot lane of the Heartbreakers, and it wasn't quite enough, but Blasty not getting enough damage quite yet, but the spell rotation will finally come back. Seems they heard me, but couldn't quite find the execution as both side laners get punished, and now the Baron's on the table.
Yeah, well, I do agree with pick off the side lanes. I think the counterpoint to that is there's not exactly enough gold for a 1v1 to happen, even with the Vex and the Soraki's, or the Vex and the Soraka ulti coming down. So can't really call it a true 1v1, you know, but
True.
Still very difficult. The wallets are just not there for a lot of the side laners. Of course, the Fury Maokai is a bit different, but mainly looking at the Irelia Vex, because that's where a lot of the sort of killing is going to be happening. But Baron taking down here. People are getting low here, actually. Soraka doesn't have the health to deal with this.
Yeah, Pranger actually just steps in. Dubroman gets an initial reset. Now stun onto one. Dubroman looking for another onto Flosty, as this is still the Baron taking down. Bongos is here. This is a rough position, and Exhaust is dropped with the Grand Challenge percentage damage. Not going to be enough, as some great positioning by Bean Guzzler keeps him alive. Very, very low. Dubroman looking for more. No longer has that Pike ulti. And the Baron did partially reset, so this continued dance is only going in favor of the Buckeyes Gaming Club. Have to be wary as the Aurelia's here, but Icy Oreo has no stats, has no damage, and Calculated Luck keeping the Baron aggroed will mean that it will finally fall in favor of the Heartbreakers.
Really solid attempt there, but Caitlyn ulti will unfortunately come through. But it was a really solid attempt. They were actually stalling it out and kiting it super well, but at the end of the day, they just don't have the damage. The health bars are pretty much blinking red as they're at the end of the fight there, and even Beangles are having to back off on the Soraka, not enough to actually sustain through it. We saw, I believe, Rapid Fire getting quite low themselves as well. Flosty also sort of blinking there, but again, just not enough gold. Even a little bit more would have mean that there's one kill going down, and that means that they have to back off the Baron. So it was a good play, and they actually did play it really nicely, but at the end of the day, it's just not enough.
Not quite enough. I think they could have stalled just a tiny bit more, played for more of Pranger on the side, but also with that Baron ticking down without much vision in the pit, it was hard to know when you were able to really press that go button and force it. But now with Infernal Soul coming up in 45 seconds, not sure if I see a way out for the Buckeyes Gaming Club unless they can find a couple picks, but with how grouped up the Heartbreakers are, they're not planning on letting that happen.
Yeah, it's going to be super difficult. You can see the Caitlyn traps coming through to wall off one of the entrances, meaning that unless you want to take half your health bar at this point in the game, you have to walk through a different point. And when you're controlling that much space,
Oh,
when you have a Maokai on the team, the Pike vision does actually save him there.
Whew.
Very,
All right,
very close,
there's nothing to be said. That was just like my heart stopped for a second. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh no, not again.
Yeah, no, the little exclamation mark that pops up when you're revealed definitely saved him there. Very experienced Pike player, of course, dude, bro, man. So is paying attention to that and quickly decided to not walk further into that bush.
As it does appear that there is an attempted contest, knowing that this soul could mean the game, but there's just not enough members. Pranger can't get in. If it actually does, but it's still not quick enough. Kill does go over to the ADC of the Heartbreakers. Double stun down, but again, there's just not enough damage. Icy Oreo finds his way, gets a triple stun, but where's the follow-up? Dude Broman's out the fight. Kinko's in the back, and now the collapse from Fwosty. It seems that Dude Broman might try and get one back, and can't even get the execute. That will be it. A triple for Rapid Fire, as now, in a commanding position, the Heartbreakers look to break the base.
Yeah, should be at least a mid inhibitor here. If they're going to play this a little bit smarter, the Vex should be going bot lane, and it looks like they will be doing that. Try to take even more towers out of this Baron buff before they have to reset due to the death timers. But very, very well played. I mean, again, good on the Buckeyes for actually trying to contest this and not just saying, okay, well, we get this, if we give this, we lose, so we might as well fight anyway. And I do respect that a lot out of teams, because it's very easy to just say, well, we don't win the fight anyway, so why are we trying? But it's kind of just a lose-lose scenario, so you might as well take the one that has a higher chance of winning.
Yeah, it's better to take a 5% than a 0% option, where it is reaching those dire straits, but there is still a world where there may be some mistakes that come out of Heartbreakers that allow this game to extend, let this Aurelia become a little more relevant, but still, it is just such a commanding lead. Now 10k gold in favor of the Heartbreakers, as with one or two more pushes, it could be the game.
Very much so, as we'll take the reset there. Looks like the Baron buff did sort of wear out on a lot of these members, so although they might have actually just died. It seems a bit early for that, but could be wrong there, as they're going to look to push out the top lane anyway. That's really the only place left that's not in their base, as picks will happen anyway.
Picks will happen. Pranger was looking for the blue buff, does get it, but it'll cost his life. So Fwosty, once again, unstoppable, and the rest of the team having to fall back, as I am a little perplexed why OSU was looking for that invade as opposed to just trying to sweep out their jungle and establish a more formal vision line.
Yeah, it's a bit peculiar. It's just kind of desperate plays at this point. I mean, the bot tower is pretty much the easiest thing that you could have gotten. It's decently easy to read that the only place left for Heartbreakers to do is actually try to break open top lane. Everything else is already in the base of BGC, so can read that, try to go for bot lane, get that objective bounty. Of course, it's very little gold when you could look at the astronomical lead that they have, but it's something, as Heartbreakers would now just continue to push out here.
Continuing to push, and we're seeing that damage out of Rapid Fire. Gale forcing forward as he is legendary. And the attempted wave clear just nowhere near enough. 2 minions, that's plenty. As the base broken on the top side. Bongo's forced to run away. And the rest of the team slowed up by the pillar. Rapid Fire not finding more damage, but still inhibitor set to fall, and Nexus Towers next on the chopping block.
Yeah, very much so. It looks like they'll just try and take this very, very slowly, very methodically, and I can't blame them for that. Don't take any risks when you are this far ahead. So we'll be taking all 3 inhibitors here, going for the 100% clear. As just so much poke damage coming out, even from the Vex abilities. The Caitlyn autos coming through, even the Peacemakers and the occasional ultimate. Too much damage to come through, as a little bit of dive here.
A little bit of a dive. The final fight as Fwosty finds one. Make it 2. Looking for more. Caitlyn denies the penta potential, but instead it'll be shared by both the main carries. A double for the ADC and the mid laner, and a triple to finish things off for Rapid Fire, as in dominating position, the Heartbreakers take game 1 in just 28 minutes.
A very, very dominating position for the Heartbreakers there. Really showing that, I mean, even though Calculated Luck was at a very horrible point in the early game, to put it gently. I mean, didn't start with items, had to reset after clearing the first item, and it was just a disaster for him, but was able to collect a lot of just free kills off of ganks, off of counter ganking, and just smartly saying, okay, well, Morgana has to gank here because he wants to try and shut down my own clear. So very good early game to come back from that. But overall, I mean, it just looked like Heartbreakers really had a good handle on how to play as a team and how to rotate to things and sort of outnumber a lot of the members of BGC.
Yeah, and beyond that, there were also some of those early game issues that we saw, but we're going to be able to break it down more as we bring Slayer back in and get the full analyst desk present to look at game one.
Thanks, J Turbo. Yeah, look at game one. Not too much to look at in my mind. I mean, 32-7 in the kill department is certainly what we describe as a blowout in the pre-made dominant. And you guys started highlighting all the points I wanted to make. You know, it was a combination of two things for me in my mind. Is that the Heartbreakers were just really well in sync with their comp, their design, plays they wanted to go for, especially early into mid game. But it was also it seemed like the Buckeye Gaming Club, Graham, was just off sync on a lot of their own plays as well.
Seems like we might have had something, but yeah, I mean, going back on that point, with that disconnect, we saw some points in the bot lane where it was Dude Broman getting ahead of the Hunt for Value, and same in the mid lane, getting ahead of Icy Oreo. So I think there could just be some of those communication issues that could be rectified going into game two, and if they don't fall so far behind early, then it means it might not snowball into such a commanding position late game.
Yeah, Turbo, great point to make. The communication errors didn't help out at all. The Heartbreakers also showed why they're a team, currently at this stature in the pre-made dominant league. I mean, if we look back to the standings, I know it's early, but they're one of the 2-1 teams. They've had a couple close series already through, and they took a composition that we certainly had question marks about and really performed well in it. Especially, I think it's important to mention. Words are seemingly difficult now. The Soraka pick certainly worked wonders in my mind.
Yeah, a lot of the fights there were really decided by just the amount of sustaining there, especially in the early game before the leads were actually able to sort of come through for Heartbreakers. And a lot of the healing, a lot of the sustain, and just the inherent tankiness of a lot of the members, the Trundle and the Maokai specifically, really became problematic in those early skirmishes and led to Heartbreakers getting to a lot of the leads that they had. So I want to see that BGC look to try and get a little bit more of an easier draft to follow, something that doesn't really fall behind too much, or something that doesn't completely lose once it's behind, is what I really meant to say. And I want to see what they look like on that style of draft, because I think it was a bit too hard, a bit too difficult to try and find ways to actually make things happen, because a lot of them were just follow-up, but not really anything that actually had setup. You had the Pike, you had maybe a Morgana binding, but those aren't the most reliable things. So I want something that's a little bit easier of execution there.
Well, it looks like Dr. Graham is prescribing some reliability for the Buckeye Gaming Club to see how their draft shakes out. And the Heartbreakers draft, we're going to go to a quick break, but on the other side is game 2 between Heartbreakers and the OSU Buckeye Gaming Club here at Premade Dominant Showcase Week 4. Don't go anywhere.
To the Risen recap. Today we're looking towards Risen Unstoppable, and the stream started off with a bang. Quicksand asleep.
It's the first game of Unstoppable Risen Premade. Come on, get up.
But I gotta say, he was smooth once he rolled into it. And our first series was Big Bongo Boys playing up against Clarity Black. For the first 20 minutes of the game, it was a bit of fighting in the top lane, but not much happened besides that.
Oh, but the engage coming out from Sejuani, but it's traded back, and Maokai actually regenerated a lot more health than I would have expected there.
For Boxer Squirrel, just really those kind of impacts making a huge difference in the gold.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I want to call them Triple B, BBB, or Big Bongo Boys, because they're not all same solos.
Then there was a mega turnaround fight for the Big Bongo Boys after they made a big dragon attempt, but then they got challenged again for the dragon attempt, which Big Bongo Boys won the fight towards.
On this side, and there's a 3 on the other side, but I can't punch to it, and I can't cut to it. But Boxer Squirrel in the midst of it all, unable to get too much out, but finds the Q before his last dies. And Chicken Fried Rice 200 teeth with good depth does not unfortunately have the W enough up to heal up. And the call comes back in the circuit, flip finds one. Can she find two? No, she gets shut down, and the exchange of lives is so insane. Can Maokai find the damage retrieval back? And he does, but unfortunately, It is the ace on the side of CLB that allows them to get this dragon.
Much later in the game, Big Bongo Boys chased Akali down in the bot lane, meaning that Clarity Black had so much freedom to take that first Baron, and from that Baron, they spiraled away from a team fight and took the victory.
The higher ranked Clarity Black, and honestly,
They
still
find
performing
Akali.
extremely well.
Oh, and she can't get out simply, tries to ulti over the wall, but that's crucial. 4 members sent down. This is the freest Baron I've seen, and it's incredibly hard to siege anything. As we're talking about that, the dragon does in fact spawn.
This will be a very important fight. Dragon Soul on the line. Let's see.
This is so easy, and the onslaught of shadows into all of the members. We talk about Wombo on one side, we talk about Wombo on the other side, but the whole time is not correctly pinned on enough members to make it worth it and to make it so they can make this comeback. And unfortunately, at the end, CLB take the
They don't.
ace, and they look to take the game.
And then as we rolled into game 2, Maokai was picked again.
Welcome to the League of Legends Champion Spotlight, featuring
Maokai, the Twisted Treant.
Maokai is a support tank hybrid.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Bold move.
Overall,
Normally Darius is only reserved for those counter picks, and it looks like they're just going to respond with Maokai.
And the team was entirely green, so they kind of had the aesthetic advantage for the Big Bongo Boys. For the first 22 minutes, I kind of got distracted watching the LCS. 100 Thieves did win, to a big surprise of all the casters, and then we moved back into the game, where Baron and Soulpoint were both hit here by CLB.
Towards this dragon, we do have good depth running up from base. Let's see if we can get here in time.
And this dragon is down to 9k HP. They opt to pull it out, so the potential steal is has a lot less potential to happen. The Maokai ulti for the engage. They want to make this happen. The Wombo combo, but the bullet time is just barely out of range, but it's not going to matter in the end. The Deathball comes too strong, but this Twitch is free firing in the backline. Good Death trying to stall time for his 80 carry, but in a 1v4, when you're already routed and they're already on top of you, they make it look easy.
With CLB taking a massive victory in the second game and this series. It seemed like the casters had gone to Hogwarts, because every single time they were casting and made predictions, they just put a caster curse down on poor Big
As
Bongo
the
Boys.
series is taken by Clarity Black.
And that was Risen Unstoppable for the night. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Risen recap. Today we're looking towards Risen Unstoppable, and the stream started off with a
Wake
bang,
up!
Quicksand asleep.
It's the first game of Unstoppable Risen Premade. Come on, get up, come
But
on,
I
come
gotta
on.
say, he was smooth once he rolled into it. And our first series was Big Bongo Boys playing up against Clarity Black. For the first 20 minutes of the game, it was a bit of fighting in the top lane, but not much happened besides that.
Oh, but the engage coming out from Sejuani, but it's trading back, and Maokai actually regenerated a lot more health than I would expected there.
For Boxer Squirrel, just really those kind of impacts making a huge difference in the gold.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I want to call them Triple B, BBB, or Big Bongo Boys, because they're not all same solos.
Big
Then there was a mega turnaround fight for the Big Bongo Boys after they made a big dragon attempt, but then they got challenged again for the dragon attempt, which Big Bongo Boys.
And welcome
Mic
back. We
feedback
just saw
off.
a dominant
Mic off.
performance by the Heartbreakers, and now the Buckeyes Gaming Club looking to bring it back as we are jumping straight into draft, and they do not want to let the Heartbreakers have that Kindred.
Yeah, I mean, Calculator Luck is very good at playing Kindred, and of course, Pranger can't say the same for the Evelyn, so that will probably be the ban that we're going to be seeing. I do want to see if they decided that if there was any champions that were problematic in the last game. I personally think that the Caitlyn just needs to go. I think it's too strong of a pick, but we'll see what BGC decides, as the Silas will still meet the ban table. Of course, very strong pick in its own right. Seraphine, I believe these are all going to be the same bans. The Akali was the last one. I'm interested to see if they switch it up, but looks like they'll go for the Maokai instead.
I like it. I like the Maokai getting taken off the table. Now, Heartbreakers have that decision of, are they going to get rid of that Caitlyn, deny the first pick out of the Buckeyes, or will they just stick to what they had before? And they will, getting rid of that Diana. So expecting to see something like a Caitlyn for this first pick. But one pick that wasn't present at all in the last draft that I was really surprised by was Hecarim. So I feel like Buckeyes, that would be a way for them to bring in some of that ease of execution, that direct team fighting engage that maybe they're missing last game. So I would really like to see the Hecarim picked up here, or that Caitlyn first pick, deny it away from the Heartbreakers. We saw how strong they could be on it.
Yeah, and now I'm actually very interested to see what the Heartbreakers' answer to this is. We saw the Kaisa Pike. It didn't really work out too well, but I do like your point about the Hecarim. Was distinctly absent from the last game, and it is a very solid pick still in the meta, and of course we see it a lot at Worlds, so I do want to see the Hecarim. It is very simple play, and it has a very easy to understand game plan. So do want to see how they follow up on that. But looks like Ashe will actually be the follow up. Now this is a very traditional answer to Caitlyn, where it says, yeah, Caitlyn's going to win lane, but we have so much utility that if we ever decide to even gank you, you're going to die. We have Ashe slows, we have arrow. Even in mid game, it just transitions a lot better than Caitlyn does. So it's more of a indirect, like, I can't really beat you at your own game, so I'm going to play a different one.
And we see the Sejuani to round it out. Couple of Freljord champs for the Heartbreakers, and Sejuani has had huge presence at World as well. One of those really popular flex picks.
Absolutely. Sejuani is just a monster in the meta. Can be played jungle, can be played top, depending on wherever you want and how you want to flex things around. So
Send it
we'll
support.
yeah, if you really so desire, it is a okay support. It is playable, but I will be interested to see where Heartbreakers decide to send this one. If it's going to be top lane, would be interesting. Did play the Maokai last game, so Sejuani is not too much of a far cry from that, but they will lock in the Pyke yet again into the Ashe, and we'll see how the Pyke does for Dude Bro Man once again. Of course, is a very avid Pyke player. Didn't really do too well. Didn't do the worst, of course, but it wasn't really finding what it needed to find in the last game. So we'll see if they can sort of remedy a lot of the things and taking a more lane dominant pick like the Caitlyn with the Pyke can maybe spell something a bit more interesting. But speaking of interesting, the Shyvana lock-in.
Yeah, we've got a Shyvana locked in. I was gonna say I like this Pyke with paired alongside the Caitlyn a lot more because you have that CC setup.
For sure.
As opposed to the Kaisa, who really couldn't do much as far as follow up on the Pyke's engage. So I like this option a lot more. And the Shyvana is something that's spiced, but we get the Akali. That Maokai was banned instead of the Akali, so now Heartbreaker's taking full advantage.
Yeah, now Akali is one of those picks that we are seeing pop up quite frequently at Worlds, and in my opinion, it's one of the most balanced states Akali has been in, where if you are an Akali player, if you are really good at playing those types of aggressive assassins, just really need to be in there, Akali is a really good pick for you to play. And of course, mid laner for Heartbreakers, Frosty is a very good Akali player here. So we'll be super excited to see that picked up. The Yasuo Yone, the Wind Brothers are not going to be seen at all. The Misfortune is interesting. They kind of had the read that this would be Ashe support rather than the typical Ashe ADC answer. I do kind of agree that it could have been flexed, but I think Ashe support kind of falls out of the meta, especially when you try to play it against like a Pyke that can really just shut it down. Trundle, though, is an interesting nod. They do think that it's Sejuani top. I would like to agree with that assessment, and so therefore don't really want to take it. I would have liked to see them actually take the Trundle themselves as a more traditional counter to Sejuani, but Wukong will be locked in, and that is presumably the jungle. Of course, flexing around can happen. This isn't really set in stone, but typical in the current meta would be Sejuani top, Wukong jungle, Akali mid.
And it also fits into Heartbreaker's playstyle. We saw Escanor really likes playing those tanks that just sort of sit in fights forever. Sejuani definitely does that. We saw Calculated Luck playing the Trundle last time, likes that carry style, is going to be on the Wukong. So it makes a lot of sense across the board. And Malzahar being brought in as the mid lane response to this Akali. I don't hate it. I actually quite like the no fun button for being able to lock down the Akali for if she is trying to dash around to fight.
Yeah, I mean, one of like the distinct characteristics of Akali's gameplay is fun. So when you pick Malzahar, which is anti-fun, then it cancels out. So I do actually like, well, not seriousness, I do like the Malzahar into the Akali. I think it's a really smart pick. But the math just checks out,
Checks out. I mean,
the Cho'Gath is also interesting.
Like, it's just obvious. As we see the Cho'Gath to round things out for the Buckeyes and getting some of that tank v tank in the top lane. And I'm going to say, I just love me a good Cho'Gath game because he just gets so large. He becomes pretty tough to deal with. And honestly, looking at Wukong, Akali, Ashe, there's not a ton of shred here. And we are going to see that Karma locked in. So it's not going to be Ashe support. The read was wrong, or maybe they just want to keep it up as a flex. Force that Misfortune ban, but still Ashe, Karma, very strong poke lane.
Yeah, and Karma just fits really well into the comp. One thing that you can make for the Heartbreakers is that they do have some decent engage. They have buttons like Sejuani Ultimate, Wukong as a champion, Ashe ulti. But just add on the Karma speed up with Shirelia's and the Mantra E can really make a lot of their engages a bit more smoother, and it makes it so that there's no one piece that's sort of lagging behind the rest, where the Sejuani kind of engages way too far, but you have the Karma speed up to get everyone in the same line.
Yeah, you have all of these options, but to keep breaking it down, we're going to have to bring in Slayer to finish off the analyst desk, as these players just want to go so quick. We couldn't bring you in for the start of draft or before draft. So now in here, looking at these teams, it's shaping out to be a fun one.
It should be a fun one. Speaking of fun, it's fine that I didn't make it for the pre-draft because I'm glad that I figured out Graham actually has a doctorate in funology. I got to learn all about the anti-fun and fun equations of League
Yeah.
of Legends, so that was certainly awesome. Yeah, certainly a interesting way to look at the compositions and a lot of different picks here. I mean, obviously we still have the Caitlyn coming out, but outside of that, I mean, there's not a single repeating champion outside of I did see Pyke guys. So Caitlyn and Pyke, but Graham, what do you think? How do you think it speaks to both these teams' objectives with the current state of the series that there are 8 unique new champions in Game 2, despite such a dominating win for Heartbreakers in Game 1?
Right, and this is kind of the cool thing about draft is that even though Heartbreakers have sort of picked completely different champions for themselves, they still have a relatively similar game plan. Of course, they changed around sort of who's going to be the carry. Instead of having the Vex be the more supportive, now they have the Akali being the more carry aspect, and you have the Ashe taking the more supportive instead of the Caitlyn being the carry. So they still have a very similar idea of, okay, we have really hard enabling top jungle with a Enchanter support, and we're just swapping around who's actually going to be the main carry here. So they have very much stuck to their own initial style and their own game plan. They're just swapping around who's being the main carry. But looking at BGC, I would say that their comp is a bit easier to pull off. They have a very dedicated front line of Shyvana Cho'Gath. They have a button, which is Malzahar, to just shut down anything that they want. And it could literally be anyone, just Akali, Wukong, either one. Will probably be the Akali in most cases, but even Caitlyn can kind of keep their distance and sort of poke away. So I do think that this draft is a significant improvement from the last one, and I think it will show that it will be a little bit more intuitive for them to play.
Yeah, intuitive to play is a great way to put it, Graham. But when we talk about that Malzahar ultimate, obviously he's gonna have to play a big factor for the Buckeye Gaming Club in any of these fights against the Heartbreakers. But Jay Turbo, when you look at the Heartbreaker comp, they have a couple of ways to shut down the anti-fun button.
Yeah, they definitely have a few ways to interrupt that anti-fun button. If a fight is started off by the Buckeyes with that Malzahar ultimate onto the Akali, onto the Ashe, onto the Wukong, someone else can interrupt. You can have Sejuani with a knockup. You can have Ashe Arrow. You can have Wukong Cyclone. There's plenty of options to deny that. But also, I'm going to say, the Buckeyes have a lot of ways to just make sure that even if someone's suppressed for only half a second, that person's still going to go down. You have Caitlyn Trap for an empowered auto. You have Pyke damage. You have Cho'Gath Rupture. You have Shyvana engage. There's so many tools present that even if there is that interrupt, I think this Malzahar is still always going to get the value he needs to get.
Well, you're talking about value. We all certainly got our value for our predictions for Game 1 as we all rocked with the Heartbreakers, and they ended up cashing in greatly for us. So, Jay Turbo, I'm going to throw it right back to you for predictions here. Are you rolling with the Heartbreakers, or are you feeling like it's more of a Valentine's Day vibe for the second game and going to roll with the Buckeye Club?
I'm still rolling with the Heartbreakers just because while I like what the Buckeyes have done in this draft, they've given themselves some more options. They've given themselves comeback tools. They've made it so that it's not just all of these engages and no setup. It's still right in the Heartbreakers wheelhouse to pilot the composition they've put together. You have calculated risk on a semi-carry engaged threat that can be bruisery in the front line. You have Fwasti on his favorite pick in the Akali as far as carries, and you still have Escanor being this massive just tank threat that will do a surprising amount of damage on the Sejuani. And I think, honestly, Rapid Fire probably wants to take a slightly more supportive role, and that Ashe Arrow hard engage will make it so easy for the rest of the team to follow. So I like the directness of the Heartbreakers comp. I will say a little bit more hope for the Buckeyes to bring this to Game 3.
Sounds like Jay Turbo thinks we'll certainly have a much more eventful game number 2, and obviously I think I speak for all of us when we say it's always fun to have extra League of Legends. Jay Turbo doesn't think we'll have it. Graham, do you think we'll get some extra League of Legends tonight, or are we getting out here quick?
I think that there will be a higher probability that we'll get more League of Legends, but I'm still going with the Heartbreakers. I think that they definitely do have more avenues to win, and I think it's a much better look. But again, Heartbreakers, this is their style that they were so dominant on in the first game, and I don't see that changing anytime soon unless BGC have suddenly awaken to some some sort of play, or they get better reads on a lot of the things that Heartbreakers want to set up, and they sort of respond to things better. They do have the options to actually do that. Things like the Malzahar ulti can catch people rotating super easily, so it is not necessarily out of contention here. I think it is very, very possible. I'm still going with the Heartbreakers.
Well, I think you brought up a great point there, Graham, because obviously I also like the Buckeye Gaming Club's composition a lot more this game for game 2, but I can't get the thought of 32-7 in the kill department, 12k gold lead at certain points in a quick game 1 win for the Heartbreakers. So I will unfortunately be rolling with the Heartbreakers squad to make this a quick sweep. But to figure out if we're going to get some extra League of Legends action or if this thing is going to be all Heartbreakers, we'll have to get into the game, into client side. Before that, though, we'll go to a quick break. Don't go anywhere, though. Game 2 between the Heartbreakers and the Buckeye Gaming Club is right on the horizon.
Back to the Risen recap. Today we're looking towards Risen Unstoppable, and the stream started off with a bang. Quicksand asleep.
It's the first game of Unstoppable Risen Premade. Come on, get up.
But I gotta say, he was smooth once he rolled into it. And our first series was Big Bongo Boys playing up against Clarity Black. For the first 20 minutes of the game, it was a bit of fighting in the top lane, but not much happened besides that.
Oh, but the engage coming out from Sejuani, but it's trading back, and Maokai actually regenerated a lot more health than I would expected there.
For Boxer Squirrel, just really those kind of impacts making a huge difference in the gold.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I want to call them Triple B, BBB, or Big Bongo Boys, because they're not all same solo.
Then there was a mega turnaround fight for the Big Bongo Boys after they made a big dragon attempt, but then they got challenged again for the dragon attempt, which Big Bongo Boys won the fight towards.
On this side, and there's a 3v2 on the other side, but I can't punch to it, and I can't cut to it. But Boxer Pro in the midst of all, unable to get too much out, but finds the Q before he's last dies, and Chicken Fried Rice 200 team with good depth does not unfortunately have the W enough up to heal him, and they call comes back in the circle, flip finds one, can she find two? No, she gets shut down, and the exchange of lives is so insane. Can Maokai find the damage to Treble back? And he does, but unfortunately, it is the ace on the side of CLB that allows them to get this dragon.
Much later in the game, Big Bongo Boys chased Akali down in the bot lane, meaning that Clarity Black had so much freedom to take that first Baron, and from that Baron, they spiraled away from a teamfight and took the victory.
The higher ranked Clarity Black, and honestly, still performing extremely well.
Oh, and she can't get out simply, tries to ulti over the wall, but that's crucial. 4 members sent down. This is the freest Baron I've seen, and it's incredibly hard to siege anything. As we're talking about that, the dragon does in fact spawn.
This will be a very important fight. Dragon Soul on the line. Let's see.
This is so easy, and the onslaught of shadows into all of the members. We talk about Wombo on one side, we talk about Wombo on the other side, but the whole time is not correctly pinned on enough members to make it worth it and to make it so they can make this comeback. And unfortunately,
And welcome back. It was, again, a very, very short break. We don't want to leave you guys hanging for too long, as we've got the Buckeyes in the blue and the Heartbreakers in the red, as they're looking to make a few omelets, break some hearts, break some eggs, do all that jazz, make my analogy not work. But still, we've got a 5-point, no shenanigans to start things off. And looking at these two teams, we all said that we wanted the Heartbreakers, that we expect the Heartbreakers to win, but I'm still hopeful that the Buckeyes can bring this one back.
I am too, but speaking of hopeful, there is items on Calculated Luck this time, so we got that improvement done.
We got items! Let's go!
Yeah. But looking at everything else, starting off the game, I mean, everything's pretty straightforward. It is Ghost for the Ashe. That is, of course, more popular nowadays on ADCs. Just the move speed becomes so nice in kiting things out. So other than that, everything is pretty stock standard. Nothing too crazy going on here.
Yeah, and I was going to say also with going into a Pike, going into this Caitlyn where you very well could need that move speed, it will certainly come to relevance. Both junglers starting on the top side, so interested to see how that will shape up.
Feedback
if that's just
off.
mean some
Mic
bot lane
off.
pressure or bot lane priority each of these junglers want to look for.
Yeah, and it's a bit of an interesting dynamic. We didn't really talk too much about the different type of jungler here, but we have a Shyvana that wants to farm versus the Wukong that is more along the line. I want to get some ganks, I want to get some early action in, so definitely can mean two different things. The Wukong, of course, is going to take a more aggressive clear, as you can see, went from red to wolves and try and pressure the bot lane because Caitlyn is expected to get a push early on, while Shyvana's of course going to be full clearing. So we will see a bit different timers on a lot of the jungles showing up. So I expect this to actually just be probably Wolves Gromp Blue, but
Oh, as we see the stun, we see the shots, and rapid fire gonna go down. First blood for Caitlyn in both games, but this time it's the hunt for value finding it, as Bongo is also looking strong on the top side. So Buckeye's off to an early lead.
yeah, very, very good play from Dude Broman. And again, it's a little bit weird because it was just a level 2 power spike there and no respect shown from the side of Heartbreakers towards the Pike Caitlyn of all things. So a little bit of disrespect there. The wave was very much in a position where they were killable. And of course, all sums burned on the side of Heartbreakers. Only the Pikes for the side of BGC. So very, very happy to take that up. And of course, Caitlyn should be able to pick up double longsword there, and is looking very pretty for the early game.
Looking very good. Very strong position is now Icy Oreo a little far forward. Calculated luck trying to find the gank, but should be able to just walk it out as there's no real hard CC. Actually, Icy Oreo not using the flash, and that's going to result in his death.
Yeah, a little bit greedy on the flash there, but I can understand that you didn't necessarily expect that the damage was there, or you didn't expect them to go for it completely, but the follow-up there, the Wukong collecting the last auto attack, will pick up the kill there. Overall, 1-for-1 score, but of course the first blood is valued a little bit higher price tag.
Yeah, slightly higher price tag. I'm going to say, though, I wish Icy Oreo had just flashed while Frosty was flying and just forced that tower damage and just go for, like, the complete outplay. I would have lost my mind. But
yeah,
didn't do that. What did not wind up flashing, instead holds that summoner spell and does go down, but still in the bot lane. Push currently in favor of the Heartbreakers, but still major advantage for the side of BGC.
yeah, and what you're describing probably would have actually been the correct play there, because it probably would have forced a Kali flash afterwards and maybe not even would have killed, so could have actually been the correct play to do the funny thing, but Pike here.
Pike on the side wasn't spotted, is now stunned under rapid fire. No flash, no ghost, no escape. It's going to be another kill for Hunt for Value, and now Beam Guzzler might be the next to fall. This Pike not going to land the second hook, but still setting up early kills.
Yeah, and it's looking so much better down here in the bot lane. Now they have the Caitlyn, they have the aggressive lane here. They're able to set up so many things, and Dude Broman is able to show off why he is so valued on this Pike.
Showing why it is that pocket pick, that priority pick, as good read out of Bongos. This top lane sort of wet noodle fight has been going the way of Bongos this entire time. That Cho'Gath damage, definitely not something to keep in mind, as a little bit of a buffer onto Escanor. There's no flash, just an ignite, and Bongos finds the solo kill.
Yeah, I think it actually got a cancel onto the Sejuani Q there. I'm not quite sure what happened. Maybe it was just a spectator glitch where didn't actually knock up but was still CC'd, something along those lines. But very good solo kill, and of course, because Sejuani doesn't take flash, once you get caught by a lot of the Cho'Gath slow, the knock-up, it's super hard to actually get away, especially with the 3 auto-attacker reset on the Vorpal spikes there. So very well played from Itzbongos to actually collect up a solo kill, and all of a sudden, the early game is looking so much more convincing than it was last game for BGC.
Yeah, BGC looking fantastic. They needed to get some leads, and Cho'Gath loves to play with a lead. Did just use that consume to pick up that first stack, and Escanor gonna try and trade back, but still commanding position in the peripheral lanes for the side of BGC, with the mid lane still in favor of the Heartbreakers. And now that Akali is really gonna be the only lead present for the Heartbreakers, is actually Calculated Luck hovering by the Drake.
Could end up being something, but of course it's very hard to actually try and get a gank off when Pike disappears into darkness. Of course, walking by the dragon.
Oh, he's going for the steal. This could be dicey. Calculated Luck just goes for the kill on a Pranger. Has the smite for HP, but this means that there's no smite actually from Calculated Luck. We'll just find the autos. Not sure how that one works out. Pranger goes down, and now that lead just might be thrown away. Hunt for Value does have the net. Goes over the wall, but it's not nearly enough, as 3 kills quickly swing to the side of the Heartbreakers, and that lead is evaporated.
Yeah, and just like that, very, very good engage from Calculated Luck, saying, wait a minute, what if I just kill the jungler and then there's no problem? And it's exactly what happened. So very good there. And of course, the Akali actually just letting Malzahar get the push and just say, I don't care, and goes for the kills anyway. So very good recognition of saying, I just need the kills to get ahead, and I don't care about the wave. I don't care about tower chip. And overall, being able to fix a lot of the mistakes that they have made early game just through this one play.
Yeah, one play, swinging that near 1.5k gold lead that was amassing just right back in favor of the Heartbreakers with them now with a slight lead of their own. As I still think that there's opportunities for the BGC, but those kind of mini throws around objectives, you've got to be careful and you've got to have the vision set up.
Yeah, very, very close fight there, of course. It was literally the last auto attack down to, but you know, it's those types of scenarios that can make or break a game, and of course in this case, of course it's still early, so I don't want to say it will break the game for BGC, but you know, it definitely puts them a little bit further behind than they thought they would have been.
Makes the game harder to play, and now Bongos might find himself in a rough spot. Does flash away immediately, but Calculated Luck has the Cyclone. There's also a stun on top of that. The Frozen Bowl is plenty as well. Splash already burned. That's going to be a killing spree for the Wukong, but Beango's a little too far forward, burning down from the Ignite. Not enough damage. Maybe that last dig will find it, and indeed, it will, as Rapid Fire throwing down those volleys. Heal comes in clutch at the last moment, slow down into Rapid Fire, finds final auto. Now it's a 1v1 supportal combat for Dude Broman, but feeling more like the assassin indeed, as Rapid Fire tries to kite, but it'll be a favorable trade for the bot lane of BGC as the Heartbreakers respond topside.
Yeah, very, very good pick there onto the Karma. The hook actually went directly onto the trap there and really set up for that kill, but of course, Ashe with the slows, we mentioned it beforehand, being able to just whittle down as you can't really escape from her with the approach velocity that you normally take on the Ashe, really makes it difficult for the Caitlyn to try and disengage there. Does pick up a follow-up kill and then, of course, dies to the Pyke later on. So far, bot lane has looked very scrappy. Of course, it is more so leaning towards the Caitlyn favor, as the gold is about one Berserker's Greaves ahead, just looking at the items.
That is a fantastic unit of measurement. Gonna have to use it from now on.
Yes.
Did you learn that from your doctorate in phonology?
I did, yeah.
Was it an iteming 101?
Yeah, speaking of fun... Oh! He canceled it!
Speaking of fun, cancel on the no fun button out of Icy Oreo. Gets shut down by Calculated Luck instead, and now Bwasti with the R2 gonna be able to escape and just quickly turns around the fight off of an individual mistake.
He just canceled it.
Oh man, that feels bad.
Yeah, no,
Feels
but
bad, man.
that is quite unfortunate. It actually would have been a kill there too, based on the health bar coming out. So very unfortunate there. Just a slight misclick, of course. Malzahar ulti is actually decently sensitive, so if you press any buttons in the wrong order, you will end up just canceling it. I believe he wanted to flash Q ulti, but pressed it in the wrong order, and of course, ended up canceling it with the Q. So very, very unlucky, but it is what it is. Will result in a lot of plates being going over to the Wukong and Akali in the mid lane.
Yeah, are putting that Herald they picked up to good use. Big chunk of change going to the carries of the Heartbreakers as now Dude Man looking for another on the Bean Guzzler, forces the flash away. Enchanted Crystal Arrow dropped. Rapid Fire wants some more. Not sure if they can really go for this fight. As remember, Dude Man has the ultimate, has the opportunity, and indeed will go down onto one. The sniper shot secures the second kill for the Pyke, and a double kill shared across the bot lane.
Yeah, the bot lane for BGC is still looking really solid though, even though the mid lane has fallen, the tower has gone over to the Akali. Bwasti is now looking extremely dominant on this pick. 2.5k gold ahead of the Malzahar, individually speaking. Making up actually more than the team gold advantage this time. So
Yeah,
really
so
going
it's
to be a
literally just one person.
Yeah.
Or not really, actually. There's
Not
a
really.
significant lead from Calculated Luck as well.
Yeah. But
it's
when you
matched
look
with
at
bot
yeah, when you look at the bot lane lead, that's where it sort of equalizes out a little bit more. Of course, the Pyke don't really expect supports to have a gold lead, but Pyke is one of those ones where yeah, it will. So it does even out in that regard, and it's gonna be the story of the Akali and the Wukong, Caitlyn Pyke, and will come down to how often can they actually kite out a lot of this engage, a lot of the potency of the dashes, of the mobility that Bwasti and Calculated Luck can have on these champions. So we'll have to see when it comes into mid-game, sort of late-game team fights, as we might actually have one right here, getting caught on the dragon.
Yeah, getting caught on the dragon was. Pranger's been going for some awkward engages, but now actually caught on the wrong side of the fight is Blasty. Will still find the first kill out of the jungler. Then we calculated luck finds one for free and a ton of damage off the Akali. And that's going to be a convincing fight, one off the back of Blasty.
Yeah, very, very good. Shuriken flip in, and of course the clean kill onto the pike there does secure the dragon for the side of Heartbreakers. And of course, as a Shyvana, you hate to not have any dragons at this point in the game, but of course Heartbreakers have been playing so well around that objective and that win condition for the Buckeyes here, and shutting them down is going to be absolutely phenomenal. Of course, the Magi's actually picked up for the Akali 10 stacks on the book, looking to get more pages. Of course, they just bought it on that back, so
Yep, did just buy off the Dark Seal, but still plenty of reading has already been done, and is looking to do a little bit more studying, as it is just going to be a matter of which carry duo performs, and so far, Blasty sort of counters the health bars and the style presented by the Hunt for Value and Dude Broman, as he's just going to take the 2v1, already found the support, looking for more. The Hunt for Value has just too much damage, nearly finding the response, but a double for the mid laner of the Heartbreakers.
yeah, and that's kind of why when we say, if you're good at Akali, if you're an Akali player, she is really good right now, because you can do things like that, where you just completely 2v1 the most fed members of the enemy team, might I add. And of course, adding 8 more pages to the book, becoming more learned as the game goes.
Yeah, I mean, you'd expect the Ohio State Buckeye students to be the ones who are studying up. It is midterm season, but instead it's going to be Blasty doing that learning, dropping the knowledge. It's now this matchup in the top side. Bongos was once favored, but now Escanor, with all that money, is just an item ahead. And it's made this game that was looking really good for the BGC just starting to fall apart, but still some definite potential to be had as Ranger, Dude Broman, and Bongos looking for more, but you've got to remember there is a Wukong waiting in the wings. Enchanted Crystal Arrow finds one, and then the Cyclone finds two. Slow misses, but the Bola is enough. The stuns are here. Blasty finds a solo in the bot lane as everything goes down, and 2 more fall up on the top side as the only members surviving so far is the bot lane. Want to take this chase, and Dude Broman stepped a little too far to the side and will escape.
Yeah, and once again, it's just a matter of numbers. Yes, they had the gold advantage, but Caitlyn was nowhere in that fight when you have the Ashe ulti coming down, eventually rotating up to contribute more DPS to the fight. But there's just too much CC, and it eventually stalls time for a lot of the main damage to actually get to that play, and of course, results in a very nice, clean 3 for 0 and picking up the tower in the meantime.
Yep, picking up that tower as well, getting second Herald, and just took another peek at the gold, and that lead in the bot lane is all but gone, as Rapid Fire picking up a lot of gold off these scrappy engages, finding a couple kills, and is now pretty much even, only a few hundred down by Hunt for Value, so not even that bot lane is really that ahead.
Yeah, it's really kind of evening out now. It still is a gold lead for the bot lane of BGC. Don't let that be mistaken, but that has come down significantly. Instead of being that 2k gold lead that we were kind of looking down the barrel of, it's now more along the lines of a 500-ish gold lead, 400-ish. So a bit more manageable. And when you compare it to the fact that this Akali, this Wukong have become absolute menaces in this game, it's not enough, and they need to look for the plays. So of course we keep seeing, okay, we want to get the Malzahar ulti onto the Akali, collect that bounty. It's going to be super difficult when you don't have that damage. Of course, did buy a decent amount of magic resist there, but Cho'Gath will
Yeah, he's just going to go down here. Bongo's too far forward. Another page, and that'll bring Blasty up to the 25 stacks. Fully learned, has all of his tomes figured out, has done all of his homework, and now continuing to snowball as Calculated Luck drops that second Herald in the top side.
Herald will drop down, of course. They will pick up the objective bounty in the bot side. We'll take that over whatever they could possibly get elsewhere. And, I mean, looking at it overall, it's going to be super difficult to actually deal with this Akali now. You do have the Malzahar ultimate. It is important to note that even though those are Merc Treads on the Akali, Tenacity does not affect suppression. So the Malzahar ulti remains unaffected from that statistic. Of course, typically Akali, when she takes Conqueror, will also take the Tenacity, so the suppression duration will stay the same. Don't be alarmed. It's not like this will be a 0.2 second suppress. It will be the Malzahar ulti we know and love. But
No and love. It's a no fun button. I don't like no fun.
yeah, it goes against my degree, so maybe I don't like it. But either way, they will be actually building towards the Banshee's Veil with that Verdant Barrier being picked up, so kind of limiting the amount of just raw pick potential off of a Flash ultimate mainly, or like a Pike hook. So
Yeah,
of course though,
towards that Verdant Barrier, but instead just raw buys and
yeah.
Demonic Embrace.
Guess you can do that.
That is a thing that can be done. Now 3 items on the Rift, 3 dragons for the Heartbreakers, as I'm not seeing too many avenues for the BGC to try and make their way back in, as Pranger nearly caught by the Crystal Arrow, but is trying to walk it out. The chase ensues. Escanor drops the Frozen Bola, and that will likely be enough as the Flash right into Calculated Luck tries to fly over, and the Unstoppable nearly enough, but the follow from the Wukong dash will allow for more and more chase to ensue, but Bongo saves one, Icy Oreo reacts onto the other, and now a very scrappy twisted fight is emerging as Hunt for Value alone on the side finds a root on the 1, and now the continuation is here for Dude Bro Man. Gets 1, gets 2, looking for more. Jump over with the Blast Plant, and maybe it's overextensions like that out of the Heartbreakers that allow BGC to get back in the game.
Yeah, collecting a few quick bounties there, but of course, still have the problem with Akali just constantly split pushing there. 8-0, and of course with the build they've opted for, the Demonic Embrace, even just the Merc Shreds and the Verdant Barrier, it is so difficult to actually get damage out. There's so much health, so much tankiness, and it's still able to one-shot you. So very, very strong right now, and of course we're about to see that that strength right now.
Dude, bro, man, does manage to escape, but again, yeah, it's just this bruiser tank Akali that still one-shots you. It's like set on release. It's just so tough to deal with.
But of course, is only indexing really into the health. So we saw the Caitlyn was actually doing quite a bit to the Akali. No armor to speak of in the build. So even though that is going to be a little bit difficult for the majority of the players on the team of BGC to deal with, the Caitlyn, the Pike will still be doing just about as much normal damage as you would expect. Of course, after that Lord Doms actually comes through, the passive will contribute to the amount of damage that they will deal to the Akali. In addition to this, the natural armor shred, of course, but it isn't necessarily invulnerable if they misplay. Frosty is very delicate, more or less, and if you get CC'd, you don't have a QSS, you need someone to stop that ulti, or you will get chain CC'd by the Caitlyn trap, by Pike ulti, and you will die.
Yeah, there are some of those item spikes coming through for the side of BGC, as that gold lead has stabilized to only about 5k in favor of the Heartbreakers. Although, still with such control over this bot side vision, this entire map really does feel to be Thwasti's playground, and he is just hunting for kills.
You can see him hunting right there, actually so deep in there, but again, not really much you can do as he'll just walk out. This Cloud Rift does make it so that the move speed for rotations is a bit more increased, and you'll use that to just slide in and out of the enemy jungle when he pleases.
Yeah, and being able to have those quicker rotates, being able to find those engage opportunities certainly does allow for this Akali to just be even more of a force on the map. And I mean, hey, who says Cloud Soul is doesn't matter? It totally impacts them. Huge.
Yeah, it matters for my pick'ems. But yes, it does have a lot of impact on the.
Yeah, Graham with his doctorate in phonology went for Cloud Soul, or Cloud Drake, as the most in his pick'ems. Didn't go for Infernal, didn't go for the really fun Hex Tech, went for Cloud. I feel like that goes against your degree.
It does. But yeah. Anyway, in this game though, speaking of fun, Baron would allow Heartbreakers to have a lot of fun, so I'd like to see them actually set up for that very soon. Of course, it is only 21 minutes, but when you are 5k gold ahead at that time period, never too early to get a Baron in your inventory, so we'll hopefully look to secure that, but it's important to note that Soul is up in a minute, so I do understand that maybe if they want to say, okay, you either take Soul or you can test us Baron, can really make that trade, and I think that's a very justified thing, because one Cloud Dragon isn't going to do much for a team when you compare it to Baron.
Absolutely not, but another point is also, this is a very scary Cloud Soul, assuming that it does go over to the Heartbreakers. You have this Wukong Cyclone that's going to be just ripping through your team. You have Sejuani, who can throw down Bola and just find her way into the middle of the fight, and of course, giving Flossie even more mobility while he's diving around a fight.
Yeah, and I mean, just looking at the Caitlyn damage onto the Sejuani, it is there. Like, if they peel for the Caitlyn, if there are opportunities to actually win fights, but it's a matter of can the Caitlyn stay safe and protected. It is very difficult to do so with a Wukong and an Akali on top of you.
Yeah, and it looks like the Heartbreakers are just saying, we're going to ignore the Drake. We're going to force you to respond to us as Flossie now first into the fight, dies on the Pranger, calculated luck into 2, but now in awkward position, CC'd up. Some damage coming down from the Caitlyn. It does flash away. First kill goes down to calculated luck. This is not going the way the Heartbreakers want, but there's so much damage out of rapid fire. Firing away, but Flossie to fall. All of the damage, all of the carries are gone, and this is going the way of the BGC and Ace turnaround as Baron's up. Drake is up, and their base survives.
I mean, it's just what I said. If the Caitlyn can stay safe, the damage is there because there's no... So, the Caitlyn was able to stay safe, kite out the Akali, kite out the Wukong, and even the Malzahar ulti coming through at the very end to make sure that the Akali stays CC'd throughout the entire duration, and of course picking up a lot of kills there. We're able to pick up Baron and the Dragon, double dipping on a lot of these objectives, and that's going to be a massive comeback and a massive swing back in the direction of BGC.
Yeah, very, very massive, as Teleport actually coming down from Bongos is going to be there for the consume. Get that extra stack, another objective bounty, and we're all evened up with the gold once again. Bounties are falling off. What a power play out of the side of the BGC.
Yeah, just like that, a 5.5-ish gold lead has evaporated, and is now only looking at about a 400-ish gold lead. And at this stage in the game, 400 is not anything. It is completely it's not completely meaningless, but it is nowhere near like a 1,000 gold lead, or what a 400 gold lead would mean at 5 minutes. We are 24 minutes into the game. That gold lead is very minimal.
Yeah, it's very minimal, and the thing is, there's an extra real threat on the side of the BGC in this pike with Dude Broman, because he's a pretty significant chunk of what's bridging that gap, but it's because it's a pike. He's dealing damage, he's finding avenues in these fights, and now Flossie, you can't just sit in the enemy jungle anymore. You're not absolutely insanely fed. You're gonna have to run away. Flossie trying to do what he can. Blast plant not enough, but suppressed down, and will get stuck in place. Another shuriken flip away, but Dude Broman finds the undertow and looks for another escape. Could actually try and make this engage happen, but will barely escape.
Yeah, very close on the trap actually connecting, but of course there is a little bit of a setup timer on the trap, so it doesn't go down instantly. Just slow enough to the rotation where the trap doesn't come down fully. Of course, not really their fault. You only have so much move speed in a game, so it's just a matter of unlucky, but will get away. It is Malzahar ulti burned. However, it is the Akali flash, and the Malzahar ulti is on a shorter cooldown, so still worth.
Still definitely worth, as they're continuing to crack towers, but you always have to be aware. Flossie is in the bot lane. They've sent Icy Oreo to respond, and with Baron minions and his little Voidling, that will be plenty to stave off the threat. As Dude Broman potentially looking for a pick, not going to find much, as this turned into a very close position, but Escanor with the flank TP straight on to the Caitlyn, and they recognize that was the problem, and they're going to eliminate her right away. Flossie on the flank, and now the rest of the BGC starts to fall. Dude Broman escaping with barely any HP, but still flashing health bars for members of the other side. But a triple for Flossie and a missed ulti from Dude Broman means this fight is all but over. Suppressed down does get a kill onto the Karma, but still a quadra for Flossie, and this takes away the Baron and takes away the momentum that BGC had.
Yeah, incredible TP flank there from Escanor, but Penta?
The potential. Flossie, I'm sure he wants it. I'm not sure if the timer is there. Lands the shuriken flip. Resets the tower aggro. Is waiting for the opportunity. Takes another chunk.
No Penta.
And yes, no Penta. Not even the unofficial ones. Calculated luck. Will manage to escape. Have the clone tank. And that will be enough, as 3 for 4. Not too bad for the BGC, though, all things considered.
Yeah, and that was actually still looking like a pretty solid fight for BGC. The only thing that made it look so one-sided was the fact that on the back end, Dude Broman actually missed his Pike ulti onto the Wukong and was able to escape, and it ended up being a little bit more uneven of a trade. But the matter of the fact is, even though Caitlyn got burst fairly early on into the fight, there are still kills being picked up, there is still damage being dealt, and that's sort of showing that the gold that they have acquired, that they are now back sort of even. Of course, gold is now shifted back in favor of Heartbreakers, but, excuse me.
You're gonna see Velocity just look for his lane opponent, Icy Oreo off the map for 50 seconds. That's quite significant as we see this Cloud Drake spawning in about 50 seconds, and there's no teleport available for Icy Oreo either, so this is gonna be a 4v5 if the BGC try to contest.
Will be a slight advantage. Of course, the Malzahar is very, very prominent to a lot of the gameplay strategies that they have devised for themselves. So without that, going to be looking a little bit desperate for things. But the Akali ultimate is down. It will probably be up by the time the dragon is there. But
what a read off of Dude Broman's hook. Just expected him to be waiting. And Hunt for Value does a ton of damage. It's going to be a significant chunk. And will not result in the death of Velocity, but still forces him to take a step back on this fight. Though with Drake about to spawn, they need to stall.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Velocity can TP back in, so it do have that. So they'll just take the reset. Akali ultimate is back up, but if they can stall enough for this Malzahar to actually make his way over, looks like they're actually just going to try and burst it before they can even get a grip on their bearings. But I'm not sure if I like this.
I'm not sure about this either. It's going to turn into a flip. It's actually the Drake resets, and the smite was just off. The regen wasn't there, and now the Cloud Soul secured. Flossie trying to run it out. Ignite takes down, but there's still plenty of damage on the rest of the team. A 1-for-1 to start, but Hunt for Value goes down, and that's all the damage left for the side of the BGC. As Oreo goes down, Bongos will play his last song as Escanor looks for the follow-up alongside Calculated Luck, and a convincing fight win. Good target selection and ace for the Heartbreakers.
Yeah, very, very good fight, but also a little bit questionable on BGC. They played it a bit too fast, and really, all they had to do was wait for the Malzahar to come in. Came in a little bit later, and of course, just flip the dragon, and eventually led to the loss of that fight. And now, the game is back in the hands of the Heartbreakers, looking to maybe close it out with the Baron power play next. However, it is still not out of the woods yet for them.
Not out of the woods. Still definitely some counterplay potential here from the BGC. Baron is now on the map, but still side of the Heartbreakers, not able to go for that immediately. So we're going to have to see how this goes, but it has certainly felt like if you can keep it's a game of keeping the Caitlyn alive, or if you can kill the Caitlyn. That's what's decided all of these fights.
Exactly, and even towards the end of that fight, Caitlyn was still free hitting a little bit. The Wukong eventually did get on and kill her, but was still able to get a lot of damage out. And of course, it didn't actually look that one-sided for Heartbreakers there. They did come out with 4 members, but of course, with the Caitlyn able to free hit maybe just a little bit more, they would have been able to come up with damage, maybe more kills, and end up turning around the fight to be a little bit more even. But with the Caitlyn sort of left to their own devices, the Wukong has so much free access, the Akali has free access, and it's super difficult to actually play these fights, especially now that there is no flash available, and that is the key here for this Baron fight.
Yeah, no flash, very difficult to play, as we're already seeing it's a 3-item Caitlyn. She's got her IE, she's got the Lord Doms, and an additional cloak on top of it, so lots of crit, lots of damage, and it's going to be a matter of can they sit behind Bongos, or will the engage, will the dive be too strong? This posturing hasn't resulted in anything quite yet. Frosty finding 1, but still just everything hanging on a knife's edge.
Really good respect there, by the way. They see the Akali on the flank and immediately respect it. No, we're not letting you have this. But Akali back on the flank once again.
Finds it, Broman, an instant one-shot, suppress onto the Akali, looking for more. Where's the damage? Not enough through the Shroud, and there is the burn, but it's not enough as Calculated Luck shuts down the Hunt for Value, and that will likely be the end of the Buckeyes' chances. The Heartbreakers, true to their name, break the hearts of this squad who brought it back, but now the game is in the Heartbreakers' sights.
A very good fight there, and again, Flossie on the flank being so difficult to deal with, even though they went back to try and deal with it, forced them out of the flank, just went right back to it, and of course, the Sejuani ulti connecting with the Caitlyn, even though Flossie got CC'd up, the Caitlyn was stunned, they couldn't actually DPS, and that ended up being a big decider for the fight there.
Major decider, and it will decide this series as Dude Broman comes up and the Nexus goes down, as that was definitely a much better game, I think, out of both teams than we saw initially, but still, Heartbreakers come out on top.
Yeah, very, very well played from Heartbreakers overall in the set, but good on BGC to actually bring that game back. Definitely drafted a little bit better in that game too, and was able to actually use a lot of their pieces to account for the mistakes that Heartbreakers were making and find a lot of the gaps in some of their positioning. Even though it wasn't necessarily super clear, it was still able to find picks with Malzahar ulti, be able to set up traps and get just massive chunks out onto key members there before fights, and was able to sort of transition that into a pretty solid comeback. Of course, didn't really fulfill throughout the entire game, but being able to bring that back to even was really, really admirable.
Yeah, very, very impressive. As to break this down for the last time in this series, we're bringing Slayer back into the booth as just what a game. The BGC almost brought it back.
Yeah, that game you guys highlighted pretty well was certainly more competitive but I mean, I kind of felt like a frosty diff. I mean, certainly if you're talking about frozen custards and milkshakes, a lot of people would argue Wendy's Frosties have a difference there. And in pre-made dominant week 4 showcase, I think the Heartbreakers would argue their own Frosty had a difference. But it certainly was a lot closer. And I know you touched on it a couple of times, Graham, during the game, but why do you think the Buckeye Gaming Club were able to force their way back into that game and to a near even gold advantage at 25 minutes?
It came a lot down to the positioning of that Caitlyn there in the sort of last half of fights. The initial fight that let them get back into the game was extremely good positioning. Where able to kite out the Akali and the Wukong and be able to live for so long, come out of that fight almost unscathed, and be able to actually have a lot of DPS come out and kill a lot of the members there. And it ended up only being, I believe, a 5-for-1 at the end of that fight. So a lot of it came down to, can Caitlyn free hit? And in a lot of the fights, the answer was no, but they needed to get to a point where they could, and it was extremely difficult. And I don't necessarily blame the Caitlyn there. It is super difficult to actually try and position against a Wukong, against an Akali, and come out relatively fine. So it was a difficult position. It was a difficult game to actually position as an ADC, but they did perform really well nonetheless.
Yeah, certainly put up a much bigger fight, the Buckeye Gaming Club. But J-Turb, I want to go to you for this next point. Heartbreakers are obviously now sitting 3-1 as we're getting through the pre-made dominant season. Game 2 maybe wasn't as clean, but as a whole, this series, Heartbreakers certainly look like a team with some really good cohesion going into week 5.
Yeah, definitely one of those teams that you're going to want to watch out for the continuation of the split and for watching this league unfold. We saw a few hiccups, but that's all that they really were. They were hiccups. They were bumps in the road. They weren't necessarily fundamental game errors. It was one moment of overchasing your lead. It was one moment of not prioritizing the right member. But we saw there was one fight that brought BGC back into the game. And it was because, as Graham mentioned, the Caitlyn could free fire. So what happened in every single fight after that? What adjustments were made? Constant dive. You were seeing Calculated Luck and Fwosty not care about the front line, not care sometimes even about the other damage threats. It was just kill the Caitlyn, we win the fight. And the fact that they have that recognition, they can make those adjustments mid-game, show how threatening of a team this really is.
They certainly looked very threatening today. And before we get out of here, unfortunately, that is going to wrap up all the League of Legends action. But I do want to ask you guys about naming a series MVP, because I feel like this isn't the easiest question to answer. I mean, Calculated Luck, outside of not buying items at the start of game 1, looked pretty solid. Obviously, Frosty absolutely popped off on Akali. The second game, Rapid Fire was certainly utilizing attack speed with both Caitlyn and Ashe across the 2-game wins. So Graham, I'm give you the hot topic question first. If you have to name a series MVP from the Heartbreakers squad, who are you going with?
I'd probably have to go with Calculated Luck. He did not have items at the start of the series, but his play was phenomenal, and being able to actually recover from such a huge deficit and only being able to get to your level spikes, especially on a champion like Trundle, who is so defined by the level 3 power spike, being able to just hit that number, be able to 1v1 literally anyone in the game. So I really do think that he played super well in that first game, and of course the second game wasn't necessarily the biggest star, but was still one of the major threats on the team. Of course, Frosty kind of took over that entire game, but I do think Calculated Luck deserves the MVP.
Yeah.
Go right ahead, Jay Turbo. I want to hear what you got to say too. Are you rolling with Graham, or
I'm going to say, I am going to say that I think Calculated Luck was the MVP for a lot of the same reasons, but I am going to throw out an honorable mention to Rapid Fire because in game one, we saw in that Caitlyn was one of the primary carries, was constantly punishing in lane, was one of the reasons that Calculated Luck was able to recover that major deficit, was one of the reasons that Heartbreakers were able to stay so clean was because of just that constant punish play out of the bot lane. And in game two, that Ashe, while not putting up the most impressive KDA at 5, 6, and 15, the Enchanted Crystal Arrows were what allowed for so many fights to occur, what allowed for some of those initial leads to snowball. And following up, that damage is still incredibly relevant. So I am going to say Calculated Luck, definite series MVP for being that shot caller and finding those opportunities, but honorable mention to Rapid Fire.
Wow. Wow. Two great options I can't even begin to choose. So I'll let everybody at home ponder that one for the next week as we wait to get all the way back around to Sunday for the Premade Dominant. But that does mean we're wrapping up shop here for week 4. Special shout out to these two lovely casters, whichever side. I always get switched up. Whichever side you guys are, if you're on both my sides, whatever. Jay Turbo and obviously Graham, you guys did a phenomenal job. And always got to make sure to shout out the production behind the scenes as well. Panda Boat doing everything you see on screen, every graphic, all of the switches. That's the main man, Panda Boat, behind the scenes. But for myself, Slayer, and everyone else here, this has been the Week 4 showcase of the Premade Dominant. Make sure to stay around Risen as there'll be action in Divine League, Draft League, Unstoppable League all week long. But for now, so long and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.